This podcast is a member of the Voices of Wrestling Podcasting Network. Visit voicesofwrestling.com to hear the rest of our great podcasts, as well as show reviews, columns, opinions, and updates across the world of wrestling.
Welcome to Jumping Bomb Audio.
Welcome back, everyone, to Jumping Bomb Audio, a podcast all about Joshi Pro Wrestling. I'm Aaron, and I am joined by my co-host, Taylor. What's up, Taylor?
Hi, Aaron. Happy May. We've made it. We've made it to May.
We have. I'm not sure that's anything to celebrate, really, Taylor. Although I guess spring is coming. That's nice.
Spring is coming. How's the weather? How's the weather in your neck of the woods?
It's been pretty nice, actually. I mean, too much rain, I thought, for sure. And like 2 weeks ago, it snowed. But it's starting to come around, and it's definitely been like a nice few, I don't know, a nice week or so at least. How's it there in New York?
Yeah, it is crazy that you talk about snow because I've been seeing all these places getting snow, and New York has been very sort of consistently nice in the 60s, although I think Tuesday it's supposed to get up into the high 70s, low 80s. So it's really going to be quite warm, but it's been good weather. I've had the windows open in my apartment for the last few weeks, which has been very nice. So I've been enjoying the good weather.
Yeah, I figured it was nice. I just saw a friend of the show, Aaron Taub. It was his birthday yesterday, and I saw a lot of posts. He went on I don't think it was the Staten Island ferry, but some sort of ferry. And they went around to some restaurants, and it looked like it was very nice. So, and I guess if people are listening to this and don't know Aaron, he lives in Queens. So, so it was in New York, and you also live in New York City. So that's how I've put this together.
I do, and there are a lot of, I'm assuming it probably, if he was going up to a bunch of restaurants, I'm assuming it probably wasn't the Staten Island ferry.
Yeah, that doesn't make much sense.
But there are a number of ferries that will take you to many places all around the islands here in New York City.
Well, if you don't know, Aaron's nickname is Big Treat. The man loves to eat. And so he's so funny. We were in Japan together, and you'll like get food. Like you will have eaten, and you'll leave from dinner, and immediately he's like scoping out a place to get a snack, like right after. So his lovely girlfriend just decided to take him to eat a lot of things for his birthday. So a nice birthday, as you can imagine. Yeah,
now that things in New York are finally opening back up, I'm sure it was he had lots to choose from.
Yes, it appeared to all be outside, so still keeping it. I don't know what the rules are in New York, but still keeping it pretty safe. But I think Aaron is vaxxed, so he's all good anyway. All right, well, that's the Aaron Taub update for Jumping Bomb Audio. I'm sure everybody was on pins and needles worrying about that. But make sure you're following us on Twitter at JBombAudio. I'm at Aaron Like the Car. Taylor's at Taymambo. You can subscribe to the show. You just type in Jumping Bomb Audio on whatever podcast app you like to use. I use Overcast, in case you're wondering. You type that in, hit subscribe, and you'll get all our shows as soon as they come out every other Monday. If you use the Apple Podcast app for that, you can give us a 5-star rating and review there. We would really appreciate it. Helps people find the show if they're interested in Joshi. And if you just want to donate to the show, you can go to redcircle.com/shows/jumping-bomb-audio and throw us a few bucks for all the joy you get from our every 2-week audio. I was going to say bi-weekly, and I know people really get in arguments about
don't start.
Bi-weekly versus bi-monthly. So
because do you say bi-weekly? Because I would say bi-monthly. That would be my thing. Because my thought is always it should be what is the period of time and how many times in that period does it happen? Every month it happens twice. I mean, pretty much, unless there's some weird
right
date thing. which would make it twice monthly. That would be my argument.
I agree with that logic. Absolutely.
Thank you. Last time I said that, though, people like really push back and they're like, no, it should be bi-weekly. I'm like, this is really not right. This is not right. How has no one ever sat down and be like, hey, let's sort this out?
Yeah, if you search like bi-weekly, it just says both. Either twice a week or every other week, which is insane. It can't mean both. It should only mean one of those things.
I just like the idea that this was made, that someone came up with this and was like, it can be both. Who cares? And then never sorted it out.
I think it's more that it bi-monthly used to mean twice a month, and then people started using bi-weekly to mean that, and it just evolved to where it's like, well, nobody knows, so we'll just go with it.
Well, this is a bi-monthly podcast. Thank you very much.
You know, we should, I was just learning this morning about people doing literal on-the-ground protest because their soccer team is bad or something. And this feels like a more important thing to protest. The screwed up understanding of bi-monthly versus bi-weekly. Do you agree with me?
I do agree with you.
Thank you. Although I fear that we have some European listeners, so they may push back on my anti-soccer protest and me calling it soccer.
Although that is not unique just to Europe. I do remember this wasn't a protest, but the year that the Cleveland Browns went 0-16, they held a parade in Cleveland to celebrate going 0-16, which made a number of people very mad.
I mean, yeah. Like, I'm not saying I've never gotten red, mad, and nude about sports, because I certainly have. But I have not protested anything related to a sport, so I feel good about that at least. What about you, Taylor? Do you get mad about sports? You strike me as a pretty even-keeled kind of guy.
You know, growing up, I used to get very mad about sports, not helped by the fact that I grew up in Cleveland, where often the teams were very bad or would lose in sort of crushing ways that became so notorious that every time a Cleveland team does well, they do these sort of highlights that are like, here's every single time Cleveland was good and then something terrible happened. And it's just run over and over again. But you are correct. As I've grown, I have become much more zen about the whole thing. I did see a championship for one of my teams in 2016, which is a huge help. Once you sort of won, to be like, it's okay, we've won before. You know, I don't know if in 20 years I'll be like, I won another one. But for now, I'm sort of very zen about the teams that I follow.
Yeah, I was it was, of course, lucky at the time, but it's like I was, 10 years old. Kentucky won in 96, went to the finals in 97 and lost, won again in 98. I just kind of assumed that's what would happen every year, you know? And then it hasn't always happened that way since.
Well, and I grew up following the Cleveland Indians, and they went to the World Series in 95 when I was 7, and I remember they lost. They didn't do particularly well. I mean, they didn't get totally blown away. But I remember thinking, oh, that's okay. You know, they got to the World Series. That's great. And they didn't win. That's okay. They'll do it again, maybe in a few years, because I was so young. Then they got back in 97 and notoriously blew a ninth inning, blew it in the ninth inning, lost in extra innings. And I remember that I had to go to bed because in 97 I was only 9 at the time. I went to bed with the Indians, I believe, in the lead, and woke up the next day and was like, they won, right? We're champions. And my mother was like, no, they lost. And I burst into tears.
Would have been worse if you sat through it, probably.
Yeah.
So. All right. Well, that's the sports corner. We've had the Air Tap corner and the sports corner of JBA. Let's get into the news of Joshi this week. Not a ton to talk about this week because there's been a new state of emergency in Japan in like 4 places, I think, that they have, shut down a lot of things or, just made more strict restrictions. This is just what I'm going to go with, even though that sucks. So that's led to a lot of shows getting canceled, most notably probably Stardom's April 30th Korakuen, which would have had the Cinderella Tournament Finals. And the poor Gaeism show gets canceled again, Taylor.
Yes, it's seemingly a cursed show, which is really hard to believe. I was so excited for it last year. It got delayed to this year. And I guess now it is delayed again. So who knows when we will see this show happen. I hope it's sooner rather than later. I hope we're not waiting another year, because that would be a bummer. Hopefully they can find a space to do it maybe in the next few months, maybe once they get sort of away from this state of emergency stuff that's happening. It does sort of feel like a flashback to, a year ago doing this podcast. Gaeism's getting delayed. We're in a state of emergency. We're talking about, these shows being canceled or postponed. We're going to be talking about shows and covering shows here that had no fans, that went ahead with no fans. So really feels like we're sort of, if not back at square one, certainly close to that place.
Yeah, it seems to have been pretty tough. It seems to be ongoing, pretty tough in Japan as far as a very slow rollout of the vaccine there. I'm not an expert on Japan or, the government in Japan or anything. So it seems like it's going very poorly. And that's coming from someone who lives in a country where it went very poorly for a very long time. But, I don't know all the ins and outs of everything going on.
Yeah, certainly from what I've heard, everyone talks about, clap crowds. I can't wait until, the crowds can be full size again and can cheer. But it seems like that's probably not going to return until probably 2022, the way things are looking, or from the things that I've heard. As you mentioned, Japan did a better job sort of at the outset than we did at controlling it, which certainly helps. But, it's really the vaccines that really help to get some normality back. And it seems like Japan hasn't quite gotten there yet. So we may see this happen maybe again. Hopefully not. Hopefully everyone can carry on as usual, but we may see this again, or we may see the state of emergency. They've been talking about extending it for a little while longer. So just fingers crossed, as with, everything, not just related to wrestling, but that, everything can get back to normal sooner rather than later.
It's funny because I had gotten to the point where I was like, okay, I'm going to start planning a spring 2022 trip to Japan. And now I'm starting to question whether that's actually going to be possible at this point.
Yeah, I'm at the point, because I've been thinking about, okay, when do I want to go back? But I'm at the point where I'm like, I'm going to wait until everything settles to even start thinking about when to go back, because I'm just assuming that any plans I would make now probably would be for the next, year plus maybe. And there is the chance that, things are continuing. So I'm like, I'm just going to wait till everything is either back to normal or as close to normal as they can get to even think about it, because I can't even use the headspace for that right now. Although I was thinking, we've been doing this podcast for just over a year, sort of in these circumstances of, our first show was the Stardom No Peoplegate show, and it's probably going to continue for a while longer. I was thinking the first show back with full fans and full cheering and everything like that, we're going to come on this podcast, and it's going to be like our favorite show of all time. And we're going to be like, every match was so good. The crowd was incredible.
Yeah, dude, I've been watching some death matches for a a podcast I'm going to do on the Everything Elite Patreon, and I watched. I think it was Okabayashi and somebody in 2010. Gosh, who's the other guy in the match? Kobayashi. So one of those is wrong. It was Ishikawa, Shuji Ishikawa, and Abdullah Kobayashi. Okay, I'm there. And the crowd, I don't know. I was just like, is this the wildest crowd that's ever existed in pro wrestling? Or have I just not seen a hot crowd in a while? Because I was like losing my mind watching this match. So yeah, I think you're right, basically.
Yeah, that was like when I watched the Hikaru Shida Ryu Mizunami match from Wave a couple years ago, when it was decided in AEW that, that was going to be the women's title match. And I was watching it and I was like, oh my God, this crowd is, they're so great. There must be tons of people. It was a Korakuen show. I was like, there must be tons of people at this Korakuen. And I looked it up on Cage Match and it was like 401 attendance. And it was just that they could make noise. So I was like, whoa, this crowd is amazing.
Yeah, if I watched the, I shouldn't have said this now because I'm struggling to remember the people who were involved, but the famous tag match from 90s All Japan.
Oh yes. Mm-hmm.
If I were to watch that right now, it would probably blow. I mean, I'd probably die while watching it from excitement of just how crazy the crowd would be. Anyway, yes, I will look forward to that. My only thing, Taylor, is I kind of wanted to plan it now because I thought I could probably get cheap tickets now. And once everything is actually open, the tickets will probably go back up. So that was really my only thought. But you're right. It's just it's a path that can only lead to disappointment. All right, some other news. Wave announced their Catch the Wave Young Wave block. We'll have Shizuku Tsukada from Wave, Yappy from Ice Ribbon, Waka Tsukayama from Actress Girls Colors, Ami Miura from Actress Girls Beginning, Tomoko Inaba from Just Tap Out, and Chie Ozora from Pure J.
Yeah, good mix of talent. I believe the way it's working is that the winner of the Young Wave block is then put into the rest of the Catch the Wave tournament. I don't know exactly what the schedule is, but I think that's what I read or what I heard. But yeah, I'm interested. I'm hoping a lot of this is available to watch because I think it's a fun group. I'm excited to see Inaba here. I think that she's been really good and wrestles for a company that's maybe a little bit, off the sort of beaten path. Tsukada from Wave has been doing quite a lot already, even though she's very new. So a really good group, and I'm looking forward to seeing who can really use the tournament as a good stepping stone and who can come out victorious.
And then we also found out that Rina Shingaki from 2AW has announced that she is retiring in November.
Yeah, sad. Unfortunately, sad news. I've always liked Shingaki. I think she's been a great person, obviously from 2AW. So she floats through, all these different Joshi companies, but I think she's been very good in a lot of different places. And she will be missed, but that, this is sometimes the way Joshi goes is that you can wake up one morning and, someone's announced they've retired seemingly out of nowhere.
Well, hell, Taylor, after last episode when we talked about Shiora Sena so much, then she announced right after we recorded that she was retiring.
Yes, it's we were like, oh, it's so exciting. She, got the win. Great things coming. And then she announced her retirement. So yeah, it can really come out of nowhere.
Although she did say she hoped that it was not permanent. So she has some sort of health problems, but perhaps it's hopefully something that can be managed. And she at least seems hopeful that she might be able to come back to wrestling at some point.
Yeah, you never know you never know if people will retire, and you never know if those people who have retired have come back. We've seen it in many different Joshi companies, people who, even some people who have stayed retired. I'm thinking of last year with, Mio Shirai, who is still a ref, still works in Ice Ribbon, came back for that one match. So that was exciting. So, and we saw the Rumble, the Stardom Rumble at their big Budokan show. We saw a lot of people come back. So certainly possible that some of these people return.
I'm still waiting on Hazuki to come back. Still waiting. Hasn't happened yet. Okay. Well, it's difficult to say two big shows for us to talk about. There was one big show and one other show that happened that was good. So we got that going for us. We're going to dive into both of those, the Ice Ribbon show, the Korakuen Hall show from April 24th, and SEAdLINNG show from a very different version of Shinkiba First Ring than we're used to seeing. But let's start with the Ice Ribbon show. What were your overall thoughts on this show, Taylor?
I thought it was a strong show. I think it had a number of good matches, didn't overstay its welcome. So I thought it was an improvement on their last Korakuen that they had in terms of some of the matches which stuck out a little bit more for me. But, continues a good run for Ice Ribbon, I think, of certainly even the shows where maybe there's not a match that is really, really calls to me, that they're doing a lot of interesting things. I think they've got a lot of interesting stories going on. And so I really enjoyed it.
I was more down on this show, I think, than usual. I've really enjoyed Ice Ribbon this year, but I think especially compared to this, I think the SEAdLINNG show that we also watched highlighted some of my issues with this Ice Ribbon show. Primarily, and it was hurt a little bit by the fact that I guess whatever file they produced of this show for Nico, the triangle ribbon match was like cut off at the end. So that hurt because the top three matches were pretty strong. But I just thought the undercard on this show for me was kind of a slog to get through compared to the SEAdLINNG show.
Yeah, I can see that. And it was a bummer. You are right that there was that issue with the Nico transmission of the show that cut off the end of the triangle ribbon match, which was a bummer because it was pretty short and it was a match that I was looking forward to. And I think I might have been a little bit higher on the undercard than you were, which probably helped my overall thoughts of the show.
That's fair. Well, let's get into it. It started off with Naoi Ishikawa, Ram Kaicho, and Thekla defeating Bani Oikawa, Hamiko Hoshi, and Yappy. So I guess just hit me off here, Taylor, if you enjoyed this part of the undercard more than I did. Interested to hear.
Yeah, I thought this match did start a little slowly, but I thought by the end they sort of picked it up, and it got pretty exciting at the end. Still in the opening match sort of way, but I think Ice Ribbon has done a good job sort of developing a lot of these sort of mid card, lower card wrestlers. Ram Tekla has been very good. I also just watched her challenge of Risa Serra for the Fantastic Ice title, which was very good. So she's had a very strong year. Bani has been very good. So it was a match, didn't overstay its welcome, and picked up at the end. So overall, pretty positive thoughts from me.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those things where for me as a viewer, I have to keep in mind that Japanese wrestling is most often made for the live crowd, right? It's not like watching, I don't know, AEW, which I watch a lot of, obviously, is more, especially right now, made for television, right? Like with the viewer, the at-home viewer in mind. This is the kind of match that if I were watching it in person, like if I were at the show, I would have had just a great time, watching it. Not that I didn't have a great time, but it's just like when you put these first three matches together, I was kind of like, okay, I'm ready to get to like the meat of this card.
Yeah, and I also will say that the card was changed very late. There were some swaps because Sayori, I know, was supposed to be in the second match, but she has I believe it's a spinal or a neck injury. So she will be out for a while. So she was originally supposed to be in the second match, which didn't happen. So some things were shuffled around. So some of these matches, some of the lower card matches, may have been a victim of sort of work on the fly after they had to change the matches pretty close to the show.
That's fair. So I should be more forgiving, I suppose. Next up, we had Ibuku Hoshi defeating Miku Aono and Totoro Satsuki. I guess the interesting thing here was Hoshi getting the win on her birthday.
Yeah, and I'm very interested to see what they do with Hoshi moving forward, where she ends up on the card, getting the win here. She's sort of in that grouping with, I think of someone like Maika Ozaki, who we'll talk about later. Sort of wrestlers who are, improving big time, but don't feel really to me like they have a sort of defined spot on the card, a defined position. And I'm interested to see what Ice Ribbon does with them moving forward, if they're going to move up the card and become, singles title challengers regularly, or if they sort of stay in that mid-card sort of place. So, looking forward to see, because I think both Hoshi and Maika Ozaki are, improving and are very good. So looking forward to seeing what comes of them, because I think Ice Ribbon has shown a really good ability to sort of take these younger wrestlers who are improving and really work with them and highlight their strengths. Someone like Suzu is probably the best example of that. But I'm interested to see what the future holds.
Next up, we had a four-way match with Akane Fujita, Mochi Miyagi, Rina Yamashita, and Nisa Seira, and it went to a no contest when a baseball game broke out, Taylor.
Yeah, they love playing baseball. There was the Fantast Ice baseball match last year in Ueno Park. So I guess they just want to play baseball. A bit of I think this probably goes without saying, but probably the strangest match on the card, and probably not if you know their personalities, maybe you could expect this, but probably not the outcome that most people were expecting going into the match.
Okay, so was the idea just that the ref was tired of their shenanigans? It felt like, because it was recorded as a no contest, but it really felt like when the pitch got thrown, that was the end of it for the ref. So I thought it was going to be like a disqualification, but more of a no contest, I guess.
Well, I don't know exactly what it was, but I would imagine that probably the ball being thrown would be a point, because then you would have someone throwing a foreign object at another competitor. If we're thinking about it sort of in wrestling rules terms, you have one person throwing an object at someone, you have another competitor who has a bat, which is another weapon. So it could be that it was just, or that the fact that they were all sort of cooperatively going along with this baseball game, you think, okay, you're all sort of in this together. So it's a no contest.
Yeah. This was fun though, for the little, they had the little, I don't know what you call it, a square. I was going to say a circle. I guess it was a circle, even though there were four of them, where they were like, I do a move to you, you do a move to the next person. And Rina Yamashita just like slapping the absolute shit out of people, and them doing the little bit where, the person tries to switch to the other side, but then Rina just slaps her anyway. I don't know. I had fun watching that. Then we had the cursed Triangle Ribbon title match with apparently Matsuya Uno retaining her title, defeating Cherry and Teihoma.
It was a very short match, which makes it even more of a bummer that we missed some of it, because then it was an even shorter match. this was probably the match on the card that I was most, and some of it was that I missed the ending, which is not anyone's, in the match's fault, but the match I was sort of looking forward to most as this sort of joint army explodes match. And then it was pretty short and didn't really deliver the way I thought it was. So probably for me, the biggest letdown on this card.
I thought the Uno and Honma parts were quite a bit of fun. It seemed like when Cherry got involved, it was less interesting to me. And part of that was because I think she brings more of like a lighter side to things. And I'd just seen like 3 lighter matches. So I was less interested in that at that point. Honma and Uno were just kind of like beating up on each other, and, slapping in arm bars and stuff, which I was enjoying. Then we got to the third match in the Suzu Suzuki Hardcore Determination 7-match series. She was defeated by Masashi Takeda by referee's decision. The funniest part of this was my wife was like vaguely hanging around, and suddenly she decided to pay attention as this match started. And so I felt like I had to explain what was happening. And she was very confused by the whole thing.
And many people, this match was very controversial. A lot of people sending Suzu Suzuki messages saying that she shouldn't be doing this. My feeling always is, and this applies to this match and applies to really any wrestling match that happens, is that if the wrestlers want to do it, my thought is go right ahead. I have, no problem as long as you think that, if it's something you want to do and, you're not putting someone else in danger by doing it. I say go ahead. And I really thought this match was awesome. The first 2 matches of this hardcore series that we've seen have sort of been, they felt sort of like introductory. Like, okay, Suzu Suzuki wants to do these hardcore matches. We're bringing these people in, and they're just sort of, doing hardcore matches, but they feel sort of like, okay, we're not going to go, 100 miles an hour. We're just going to sort of ease you in here. Do some hardcore stuff, do some sort of more fun hardcore stuff. But this was the first match to me, this third match, that felt like Takeda came in and was like, okay, you want to do a hardcore match? I'm going to do my style of hardcore match. Sort of whether you like it or not, bringing out the scissors, which is a big Takeda thing, and they still had some funny, they had the bells, they had the sort of multicolored plastic fork ball, which was the one thing in the match I think didn't really work out, because I don't think they realized how sort of mobile it would be, that they put it down and it would move. But I just thought it was great. I thought it made Suzu look really tough to take all this, offense from Takeda. I think there was a lot of stuff with chairs that really, I think so many people use chairs in matches like this that it feels like you've sort of seen it all. But I really liked a number of things he did. He sort of lined the chairs up in the corner while Suzu was in the corner, and then hit the chairs, which looked really crazy. So overall, I thought it was, easily the best of the 3 hardcore matches. And to me, it was my favorite match on the show.
Yeah, it was my favorite match on the show too. I thought it was great. I don't really get, I had heard like the discourse before I saw the match, and I really didn't understand it. I mean, she did get bloody, that's for sure. But it seemed, honestly, a lot of the stuff seemed like Takeda was going pretty gentle, as far as like the kind of stuff that was happening in the match. Now, he did hit her very hard with a chair at one time, but it seemed like the chair was worked, so it was fine. But yeah, I'm with you. It's like, if this is what Suzu Suzuki wants to do, then I don't have any real problem with it. I don't have any problem with it at all. I mean, that's something that I'm very rarely going to agree with people on, is like when people are worked up about safety in wrestling matches, just like between two people and the kind of spots they decide to do in a match. That's basically never going to bother me. Basically, as long as the company or, someone with on the card with more power isn't like forcing someone or pressuring someone to do something, then I don't really have any sort of issue with it. And I thought this was a lot of fun. The staple spot was a lot of fun. Her stapling the thing onto his tongue. That was great. Yeah, even the scissors, like he didn't seem to be really digging them in there the way he might with somebody else. So I don't know. I just enjoyed it. She announced that she's going to have Jun Kasai and Isami Kodaka for the next two. That sounds fun. So I'm all in on this series of matches.
Yeah, and I do think there's to speak a little bit more on that, I think there is a difference between, if someone watches this and they're like, oh, this isn't really my style, this isn't really a thing that I enjoy, that's different from someone, and I think a lot of the feedback to Suzu, at least from what she said and sort of what was talked about, was a lot of stuff that's like, oh, you're too pretty to do this and you're, this and that, where it's a little bit different from, when we always talk about, like Kota Ibushi, landing on his neck or something and people go, oh, it's not safe. There's a little bit of a different aspect to this with it, being a woman, being sort of younger, coming from this company that isn't, they do a lot of this stuff with, Risa Sera and the Fantast Ice stuff. But, so Aaron, I think we're on the same page that, if they want to do it, if they're, if they feel they can do it and it doesn't put someone else in danger, I'm thinking of that like lucha spot where someone like threw a concrete brick at someone's head. Like that obviously is different because you've now put the other person in danger, and they may not be okay with that. But yeah, I'm perfectly fine with it. And I really liked, it's funny you mentioned the staple gun spot. I really liked that Suzu went for the low blow again, which has sort of become her calling card in these matches. And the first time it was blocked because Takeda had the staple gun in his pants. And so I thought that was sort of a cool thing of like, oh, Takeda's been studying, or he heard that Suzu has figured out this method. And at least the first time, because she did get him again, she got him later in the match. But the first time it was sort of like, we've learned that this is what Suzu's going to try and do to win. So I thought that was sort of a cool storyline in the match that really covered the entire, series.
It's also insanely patronizing to say to her, "You're too pretty to do this," and because that it was like men telling her that.
Oh yeah, of course, yeah.
So it's like, come on, she should do what she wants to. Is kind of my view, and like we all do. Like whether you think this is smart or dumb, we all do dumb things when we're young. So. I don't really have any problem with that either. But I thought Takeda took care of her was my main point. Was like, at no point did I think this was more dangerous than like your average, honestly, your average wrestling match, let alone your average death match. So it was fun.
And frankly, if you're going to do a hardcore match and you're like, well, you need someone who's going to really, you're really going to trust, Takeda would be up there as, a guy who's been doing it for so long at such a high level. He's a guy certainly that I mean, not that I'm going to be jumping in and doing hardcore matches anytime soon, but he's a guy that I would trust knowing his level, the level that he's been at, at least in the last few years, if not longer.
Yeah, that's another cool part about this series, I think, is it's all like the guys you would think of if you were going to have a deathmatch series. So that's been enjoyable for me anyway. All right, the International Ribbon Tag Team title match. We had a title change here as Hiragi Kurumi and Hiroyo Matsumoto defeated the Rebel X Enemy team of Maika Ozaki and Maya Yukihi.
Yeah, I thought this match I thought it was good. It didn't quite meet my expectations for the match. I don't know what it was. It just never really clicked onto that next level for me. I wasn't totally surprised by the title change, seeing that Kurumi and Matsumoto had just sort of had this storyline of, hey, do you want to team together? It would be a bit weird for them to lose. Feels like Rebel and Enemies had the titles for, long enough that it doesn't really hurt them that they lose it. But overall, probably in that like 3.5 range where I was like, oh, it's pretty good. But, I came into the match, especially with the matches that Rebel and Enemy has had in this tag title reign, which I think have been all pretty consistently good at a high level. A little bit of a disappointment for me.
Okay, I'm glad to hear you say that because, my note was basically that the match was good, but it didn't really grab me, which I think is what you're saying also. Is there just wasn't that hook about it that really got me invested in the match in any way? I was just kind of like, okay, we're doing this thing. And it led me more to DMing you with maybe my most controversial question, Taylor, my most controversial opinion. And I'm going to pose it to you here. Is Hiroyo Matsumoto's gear intended to evoke a hamburger or taco look? What do you think about that?
Well, I just wanted to give a little pause there so that when someone clips the show for that quote, that I'm not in the clip at all.
I prefaced it by saying it's a controversial opinion, but I don't think it's out of bounds.
Well, it isn't even an opinion, it's a question.
Well, I'm suggesting with my question that it evokes to me a hamburger or taco.
So your opinion is it looks like a hamburger. I honestly do not know. Maybe there's someone out there who knows the history of this look, because I know it's not her only look that she's had. I don't know. I was trying to think of some way that it would tie into, the Godzilla Lady Destroyer gimmick that she has. And, I don't really know. If someone out there knows the history of Hiroyo Matsumoto's gear and can let us know, that would be great. If you let us know, we'll talk about it. We'll talk about it on the next episode.
It's got that brown base that evokes a hamburger bun for me, or a taco shell, depending on your interest. You got the red and the green and the yellow. It all just kind of gives me the feel of condiments. That's all.
I mean, you may be right. I don't know. We'll see what people have to say. I don't know if there's if she's talked about it or if she said. But I guess if anyone listening knows, please let us know the burning questions that we have.
I met her at Pile Driver. I wish I had asked her at that time, is your gear meant to evoke a type of food?
Well, it's funny because I met her at, she was on the Shimmer WrestleMania show in New York. So I met her there, so I could have asked her. But of course, I didn't know that you had this thought, so it would have been hard to do.
I'm going to be honest with you, Taylor. I've been thinking this for years, and I've been too afraid to say it out loud.
Wow. Well, I salute your bravery.
Thank you. All right, well, let's talk about the main event of this show, the Ice Infinity title match. Tsukasa Fujimoto retained her title, defeating Tsukushi Haruka.
Yeah, a match sort of like the opener that I thought started a little bit slowly, but I thought by the end they definitely got there. This was a match I went into with big expectations because these are the two of the best workers in Ice Ribbon, if not maybe the two best, in my opinion. So So to me, it was sort of starting. I was like, okay, this is not quite where I thought it would get. And then by the end, I thought they really turned it up and delivered a very good match. So I was over 4 stars. I was at 4.25. I was sort of between 4 and 4.25, but at the end, I sort of really enjoyed the end. So I went up to 4.25.
Yeah, I think that's fair. That's probably about where I would be. It didn't feel like it went to that next level, to be in like the 4.5 star range, but it was very good. Takushi is just incredibly smooth. Everything she does looks good. Like she flows so easily from one move to the next. And the thing that Tsuka does that I love, and she showed a lot of that here, is she's so good at being, the only way I can describe it is like being dismissive of the other wrestler. Like there was a spot here where Takushi went to run the ropes. They're kind of like standing in the middle. Takushi goes to hit the ropes, going to come back and hit her. And, you see a lot where the other wrestler follows them and cuts him off or whatever. But Tsuka instead just caught up with her and kicked her in the back of the leg. And she just fell. And then she kicked her in the head, I think, after that. And it's just this great way of being like, look, you are nowhere near my level. It's just like that's what she gives off, not that that's true, but just like that's what her character gives off. And I love that about her. And I thought she did a great job of getting that across in this match.
Yeah, overall, I think I was expecting sort of in that 4.5, star range, something in line with the Suzu match earlier in this year, and it didn't quite get there, but still, I think really highlighted both of them very well. And I think they're two opponents that really, obviously they've been in this company together, for a while, which helps, but I think they're two opponents who really fit together very well. Their styles really fit in terms of, having an interesting, a fun match.
All right, well, that's the Ice Ribbon Show. Anything else you want to say about that before we move on?
No, as I said, a fun show and worth we're checking out. I'm not sure whether it's still available. I don't think it's still available on Nico, but if you look hard enough, you may be able to find it.
It's certainly out there, waiting to be watched. Okay, and then SEAdLINNG on April 26th, they were at Shinkiba First Ring for a no fans show, but a very different Shinkiba First Ring, Taylor.
Yeah, back in, with a different, I think it's like the training, I don't know what the setup there is. I don't know exactly how everything works there, but yeah, definitely very different looking. Although if you've watched some of the SEAdLINNG videos that they put up on their YouTube in terms of like training videos or promo videos, it's a place that that may look familiar to you because a lot of the training stuff that they post is from there, and I think they do their sort of quote unquote press conferences from there as well.
Yeah, so there's just like workout machinery everywhere. There was a tanning bed in the corner. I was waiting for that to get used. It didn't. That was a little disappointing for me. But yeah, it was just kind of fun thinking about having been in the building, when it's set up for wrestling, just like how different it looks, in that. But I was like, if I'm talking overall thoughts on the show, I was pretty concerned going in. I DM'd you about it because I started the show late at night and there were no fans. But honestly, it didn't end up being an issue for me. Like they brought a lot of energy the whole show.
Yeah, my maybe controversial opinion is that I almost maybe enjoyed it more than, a fan show, because I think at this point you sort of, in your mind, you see fans at these shows and you understand that, obviously there's these restrictions for people's health, but you see them and you're like, oh, I wish they would cheer. But with no fan shows, mentally you sort of say, okay, there's no fans. So I'm not good. You don't have expectations, even though you understand that people can't cheer. You're not going in thinking, oh, there's fans and they should make a lot of noise. you just go in and you say, well, there's going to be no fans. I'll just concentrate on the in-ring stuff. And I think you are right that there were so many things, all of these matches were very high energy. There was a lot going on during the matches, in between the matches. So I thought they kept a good energy. The show didn't. The show was very was pretty short. The sort of in-ring bell to bell was under an hour and a half. So very easy to watch, but also I think easier for the wrestlers to keep that energy up for a shorter period of time with no fans.
It kicked off with Ayame Sasamura defeating Riko Kaiju, and maybe it's just because I watched these most of these two shows kind of back to back, but like this opener, I really loved. Now I don't want to get the point across that like I don't like sillier stuff or goofier stuff because I really do, but you can also do these just kind of like short, very competitive, hard hitting openers like early on shows. And I thought they did a great job of that. And I quite enjoyed this match.
Aaron, if there's anything I know about you, it's that you're deadly serious all the time.
Yes, true. When I'm not talking about whether gear looks like food.
Yeah, I like the match as well. I've always really been on the Ayami Sasamura train. I think she's really great and underutilized in the world of Joshi. I thought that then she was injured and then was out for a while, which I think hurt her a little bit. But I'm glad to see her back in SEAdLINNG, establishing herself. She'll be on the next show as well, which we'll talk about coming up. But yeah, a good show, a good sort of opener for Rico to go up against, someone a little bit, closer to her age, not a veteran, but someone sort of closer to her in experience and age.
Then we had, one of my favorite styles of matches, the high-speed three-way match, Kaho Kobayashi defeating Chikayo Nagashima and Itsuki Aoki. I trust that you loved this, Taylor.
It didn't really pull me in all that much. You'll be surprised to find out. I didn't dislike it. But, I thought it was, fairly good. I didn't really have many strong thoughts about it. I did think the end with Kaho sort of winning what seemed by, through... it wasn't her sort of winning the match. She sort of won it by default. I thought that was funny, but overall, I didn't really have a lot of strong thoughts about this match.
Yeah, it's just not my favorite style of match. Although I did enjoy Natsuki Taiyo just like doing the slow count for Kaho versus the fast count. That was kind of funny. So I did enjoy that. It's just not the kind of match that I truly love. Then we had a tag match that went to a no contest with Las Fresas de Egoistas, Asuka and Makoto going against Rina Yamashita and Yumiko Hota. Although mostly just Yumiko Hota. Rina was out of action for a bit, Taylor.
Yeah, and Yumiko Hota, since she arrived in SEAdLINNG, has really been been one of the focuses sort of the storylines, and she was the focus here in this match. And then after the match with the Riko Kaiju stuff, Riko throwing the exercise ball into the ring in the middle of the match, which I thought that was an interesting, of all the things in that room to sort of throw in the sort of large exercise ball, which probably weighs about 2 pounds, was an interesting choice. But I thought, obviously, no winner, a no contest in this match. But I thought, it was a lot of fun. It was high energy. I do really like the story of, the Asuka Yumiko Hota feud, which I think has taken on, they've got sort of a lot of different pathways with this, that's sort of the way it started. And then you got the Riko stuff coming in, and then Ayame Sasamura coming in to defend Riko after the match. So you've sort of got a lot of branching paths with this storyline, which I think is pretty cool. And I think that SEAdLINNG, as always, does a really good job of doing these sort of storylines, these, semi-main event, undercard storylines, so that it's not just sort of, here's three random matches and then a main event.
Yes, that's always helpful for your interest in a show. So they close this show out with the Beyond the Sea tag titles on the line. Arisa Nakajima and Nanae Takahashi retained their titles against Honori Hana and Riko Kawahata in an excellent match.
Yeah, I thought this was very good. I thought Honori Hana looked very good, is clearly improving. I think Riko Kawahata has been a great addition to, I don't think she's officially signed or anything like that, but she's been appearing on the shows, and I think that she's been a really strong addition. I think she fits really well with the style of a lot of this roster, or at least, the roster and then the people who sort of appear regularly, Asuka, Makoto. So I think that this was really strong. I don't think the outcome was really in doubt between this, more veteran team and the younger team, which I think brought it down maybe a little bit for me. But I went 3 3/4, so I thought it was a really fun match and a good cap to what I thought was a very fun show.
Oh, I liked it quite a bit better than you did. Probably would have been in like the 4 1/4 range or so. Just like what I love in wrestling: fast paced, hard hitting, felt urgent. Just a lot of energy. Just what I want to see, especially on like a show like this where there's not a ton going on. It's like, oh, here's just a kick-ass match where we're going to go all out for 20 minutes. It was a lot of fun. So, also, what are your thoughts generally about Riko Kawahata?
Well, I think that she's very talented. I mean, I like the, obviously coming from the actress girl's background, has the sort of dancing aspect, but has a sort of high energy to her that I really like. And I think that she's a solid, I think that she's a very solid in-ring worker. Do you have did you ask that question because you have a strong opinion?
I don't have a strong opinion, but it's just like, how I said maybe early on we were doing this show that like Miyuki Takase like reminded me in some ways of Sari. You remember that discussion?
Yes, I do.
Well, then Riko Kawahata like reminds me in some ways of Miyuki Takase. So it's like this. It's like this sounds like this doesn't sound fair to Takase, who is excellent, but it's like Kawahata to me is like a copy of a copy in a way. I like her a lot. It's hard for me to like knock that out of my mind when I watch her wrestle for some reason.
Well, and that makes sense because they come from the same, place. Right. So they are sort of cut from the same mold. And I can see that, I can see that comparison. Obviously Takase is like one of the best in the whole scene.
Yes.
But, I think Riko is someone who can, I think is good now, but can even continue to improve, especially now that she's sort of branching out and facing new people. I think it's always valuable in all of wrestling to, face new people because you can learn new things and you can, make yourself better.
I agree. So I'm glad that I wasn't totally off base with that take. Okay, well, those are the two main shows that we watched for this week. Of course, we'll get into the Spark Notes section and talk a little bit about the very little else that went on the past couple of weeks, Taylor.
Yeah, so Stardom had a few shows on the 29th. They had an artist title match between Oedo Tai and the Cosmic Angels, the champion, the Cosmic Angels, with the Cosmic Angels retaining. The one thing, and I did watch the match, and the one thing that I think is really valuable about the Cosmic Angels is that they feel to me like every match they're in, they're the underdogs in a way, which I think is really valuable. And it's not something that it's not a feeling I get with really any other. I'm trying to think of really any other person or group in Stardom where I get that feeling of, oh, they're the underdog. They could lose at any point. They obviously won this match. They're the champions. But I think that that's a really valuable tool for a company to have with a group, where there will always be this tension of, this could be the match that they lose. So I think that that was really valuable. I don't think the match really was anything to go out of your way to see. But that was just a big thought that I had while watching that match. And then just today, there was the tag title match between the ALK, Julia and Shuri, against Momo Oz, with Julia and Shuri retaining the title after pinning Azumi. So sorry to Aaron. Again, Momo coming away from a title challenge unsuccessful once again.
But I can't wait for people to tell me how this means she got a big push this year.
But anyway, Tokyo Joshi also had a few more shows. They've continued to do their all English shows. Those happen on Wednesday and Sunday nights, at least here on the East Coast of the United States. They had some smaller shows on the 24th and one yesterday on the 1st. And they had a few matches on the Future Urban Music Festival. I don't think that those matches aired, but photos of the matches were going around Twitter. There was one, because it was at Ueno Park, there was one with Hikari Noa diving off part of the stage at Ueno Park. So it looked like a fun show. I don't think that is aired, but I will keep my eyes peeled, because hopefully maybe they'll put it on Wrestle Universe, because it looked like a fun show in a fun environment. I always love shows at Ueno Park, because I think it's a cool sort of change of pace from places like Shinkiba and things like that. Ice Ribbon, the Peas League, came to a close with Itsuki Aoki defeating Rina Shingaki in the finals, and she will get an IWGQ title match, which we'll talk about in the upcoming shows. Diana had a show on the 18th of April, which had just happened when we recorded the last show, so we didn't even have the results at that point. But Kyoko Inoue defeated Ayako Sato for the Diana title, and very happily for this podcast, the Luminous Tag Team, defeated Ayami Sasamura and Rina Shingaki to win back the tag titles on that show. So that's very exciting. And then Diana has been doing a number of dojo shows. They did one on the 1st, which was Madeline. 3 matches. She was in all of them. They did one today as well, and they have one upcoming tomorrow. Actress Girls had 2 shows where they did a number 1 contenders tournament for the Colors title. Hikari Shimizu defeated Misa Matsui in the finals of that. And then also on that 429 show, Saki successfully defended her Colors title against Yuna Mizumori. And then finally, Choco Pro started season 7. They are doing a show every day from the 1st to the 5th for Golden Week. They had 110 on the 1st with an 8-person tag, Pencil Army against Best Bros and the Egg Tarts, which I'll talk about in a few minutes. And then they did 111 today, which had Best Bros versus Minoru Fujita and Rina Yamashita in the main event. So that is everything. That is the few things that have happened, shows that were not canceled and still went ahead in the past 2 weeks.
All right, and we had been early in this show doing a little section on our recommended matches, but Taylor, you wanted to bring it back. So tell us some matches that you've enjoyed.
I figured, why not bring it back? Feels like a good time. Some of these matches we have talked about in our bigger reviews, but I have Four recommended matches. The first one, Masashi Takeda against Suzu Suzuki from that Ice Ribbon show on the 24th, as well as Tsukasa Fujimoto and Tsukushi Haruka from that same show. Definitely both worth checking out, as well as recommending that Arisa Nakajima and Nanae Takahashi against Norihana and Riko Kawahata match from the SEAdLINNG April 26th show. All three matches we're checking out, but I do have to give a special shout out. Just mentioned Choco Pro 110, and I have to give a shout out. Definitely worth going and checking out the Pencil Army, Lulu Pencil, Emmy Pencil, Minoru Pencil, and Chris Pencil against the Best Bros of Mei Suruga and Balianaki, and the Egg Tarts of Chie Koshikawa and Hagane Shino. A great match. Choco Pro 110, it's a one-match show, so that match takes up the entirety of the runtime, but there's a lot of things that happen. I said, once I finished it, I was talking with some people who also watch it, I said I think it's probably a top 5 episode of Choco Pro, which says a lot considering they've done 110 and now 111 episodes, but very strong, worth checking out, even if you haven't been following the Choco Pro stuff. There's not a ton of storyline in the match, so it's something that's very easy to follow, and it's go action really from start to finish. So probably my most recommended match of the past 2 weeks.
All right. Well, you told me too close to the show for me to really think about this. So for next episode, I will put together my recommended matches. But I haven't seen Choco Pro 110 yet, but I agree with the other three. They were all certainly matches that I would suggest people watch. So that's just what I'll say. But let's talk about some shows that are coming up. And included in this, we will do a preview of the Tokyo Joshi Pro Korakuen show on May 4th.
Yeah, so Stardom has a number of shows coming up. They have a show on the 4th that's highlighted by a Donna Del Mundo Queen's Quest 8-person tag match in the main event. On the 5th, a few things happening. They are doing a Donna Del Mundo versus New Generation 5-match series on the card. Himika against Rina, Natsupoi against Mina Shirakawa, Maika versus Hanan, Shuri versus Hina, and Julia versus Ruaka. So those should be some interesting matches. And then in the main event, it is a 4-way tag title contenders match. Utami Hayashishita and Saya Kamatani against Mayu Iwatani and Starlight Kid, against Tam Nakino and Unagi Sayaka, against Natsuko Tora and Konami. So the winner will become the new number one contender for the tag title. So lots of strong teams in there and lots of possibilities for who could be the next challenger for those tag titles. They then have shows on the 5th, or they have shows on the 8th and the 9th, and then on the 14th will be the second round of the Cinderella tournament. The Cinderella tournament now will become a 3-day tournament. So the 14th will have the second round, and I believe the 29th show on the 29th will have the final. We'll have the finals. So it's now gone from a 1-day tournament to a 2-day tournament to a 3-day tournament, partially out of the hands of Stardom, but that will be interesting to see. And then they also have shows on the 15th and 16th. So that is Stardom's very busy schedule as we hit Golden Week here. SEAdLINNG has a show on the 12th, which is going to feature Yumika Hoda and Rina Yamashita against Ayami Sasamura and Riko Kaiju, which spins off from the happenings of that 426 show with Ayami coming out to defend Riko. And then in the main event, Arisa Nakajima and Nanae Takahashi will take on Asuka and Makoto in a tag title match. And if Asuka and Makoto lose, La Frescas have to disband. So we will see what happens. Nanai saying that La Frescas are part of the past and should disband. So we will see what happens. I know that they are, Asuka, Makoto, Rico fan favorites in that group. So we will see if they take them apart.
Well, Taylor, somebody brought up the point that when this last happened, it was because Ryo Mizunami was going to AEW.
Oh,
Taylor apparently did not see that discussion.
No, I did not see that. I did not see that discussion. I did not think of that. But it is interesting because, Asuka now is the Beyond the Sea champion, singles champion, obviously. But I do wonder sometimes if you could. I mean, my thought would always be with this that if I were Nanai, I would say, okay, let's figure out a moment when we have, X amount of time, whatever the time needed is, when we have 3 weeks between shows or something, or we can lose you for a show and send her over and have her with the title and get some sort of, notoriety for SEAdLINNG. It would certainly help. It's a little bit tough with all the restrictions, with the traveling restrictions and things like that. But it's an interesting thought. Look, I would love to see Asuka show up in AEW. I think she did very well in their tournament. And I think that I think AEW has done a good job sort of bringing in, they had Maki Ito, they had Takeshita come over for a little while, and he did a few matches. So I think that they've done a good job sort of bringing these people in, highlighting them, and then they sort of go back to Japan. So certainly an option. Everyone who listens to this knows I'm a big Asuka fan, so more opportunities for her are better for me. And frankly, some people might argue, oh, well, she, just stay in Japan. You can see her in Japan. But if the debate is between she goes to AEW or she goes to WWE, I would take AEW 10 million times before WWE, because I do feel like that WWE, it's sort of WWE signing her is the sort of sword hanging over everyone's head where it's like, oh gosh, that would really be killer to lose her. So.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of agree. It's like I would, obviously, because I have to watch every week of AEW, I would love to see Asuka there, but I also love seeing her in Japan on the scene. So, either, as long as I get to watch her wrestle, I'm going to be pleased, basically.
Yeah, but like I said, AEW has also done a good job of sort of being like, here's someone who's featured, and it's not like they're staying in AEW for 6 months. They sort of come over, they're there for a week, they tape, 3 or 4 matches, and then they leave, which I think is a good system because it helps them out. It features them. It gets, AEW another body. And then they can go back and, still do things in Japan with their companies. So I do think the way it's been, and it may change once the traveling can happen again and things like that. But I think it's sort of been the best of both worlds currently for, the situations with Ito and Takeshita. So maybe they can do that for some more people and some more Joshi wrestlers.
I agree.
But next is Oz has a show on the 9th. The card is Akino against Mei Suruga, which I think is a fun match that I'm looking forward to seeing. Kaho Kobayashi against Sakura Hirota. And then the third match is, so there's 6 wrestlers: Sonny Okada, Kakeru Sekiguchi, Mayumi Ozaki, Yumi Oka, Aja Kong, and Hiroyo Matsumoto. They will be split up through, I think, a draw into 2 teams of 3. So you will have some mixing of these units, these Oz Academy units, because you have 2 Mission K4, 2 Osaki-gun, and 2 Beast Friend wrestlers. They will be split up into 2 3-person teams, and then the winning team will get 1 million yen from Mayumi Ozaki. So maybe Mayumi Ozaki will win the match and save some money there. But that show is highlighted. Kaori Yoneyama and Yu are going to make their first defense of their newly won tag titles against Tsubasa Kuragaki and Itsuki Aoki. So that is the Oz show. And then time to talk about Tokyo Joshi on their upcoming Korakuen show.
All right. How exciting. Now, you've listed this here from top to bottom. Is that how you want to go through it, Taylor?
Well, why don't we go from bottom to top?
Okay. We're going to have this is an exciting match at the bottom, too. I can't imagine this is actually going on first, but it's how it's listed. So we're going to talk about it first. Princess of Princess Championship next challenger, 3-way match. Yuka Sakazaki versus Mizuki versus Shoko Nakajima. The winner will challenge whoever wins between Rika Tatsumi and Miyu Yamashita at the Saitama Super Arena main arena Cyber Fight Festival 2021 on June 6th.
Yeah, so that will be the Tokyo Joshi title representation on that big joint show with DDT, Noah, Tokyo Joshi will be there. So it will be the big show. So that will be, obviously the highlight match will be the title match for Tokyo Joshi.
Well, what do you think? Who's going to win this one?
I don't know because, I also think it's interesting now because as we talked about, we're in the state of emergency. There's some debate that it will extend into the end of June, which would mean that this show, the June 6th show, would be affected. So I guess, you would think initially when you're thinking, okay, we have a big show we want to try and draw, you might try and pick the two biggest names, but, you have some DDT matches, Noah matches that may be able to draw the fans in enough. I'm wondering whether, I guess my thought would be, is it a Mizuki win again and she goes on to this big show and sort of gets that win that she didn't get last year against Yuka, and maybe they build towards closer to the end of the year a rematch of Mizuki and Yuka Sakazaki that they do at the big end of the year show where Mizuki can finally sort of win the big one, defeat her, and establish herself as champion. That's a very sort of usual path, is that you don't beat someone else gets a title, you beat them, and then you sort of have the return match and you're the champion now as opposed to them. So I think that could be an interesting outcome. Mizuki wins, goes on to take on Rika Tatsumi, wins it there on a big show, and then has that sort of big goalpost in the future of Yuka Sakazaki is going to come for her, and she will have to successfully defeat her to retain the title.
Yeah, it all comes down to who you think would win that match. I assume Rika Tatsumi versus whoever is the winner of this match. Because if Tatsumi's going to win, there's no point in it being Mizuki, I don't think, because you want Mizuki. I think in Mizuki's next title match, you want her to win. So, and to me, Shoko's kind of been out of the mix a little. If you're really trying to establish Tatsumi, which they've been doing, like her beating Yuka, I think would be helpful to her. And also, Yuka would come out of that fine. So my sense is whoever wins this match will tell us a lot about where the Tatsumi title reign is going.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit too early in my mind to do Sakazaki again. Even though at that point by June it will have been 6 months. I do think that, I think Shoko Nakajima winning would sort of be that, okay, we're having someone winning, they're going to go to this big show. But I think that would indicate to me that Tatsumi's probably retaining, because she seems like the one person where it would feel a little bit to me sort of like, okay, this is just another, it's just another defense for Tatsumi, someone who is on the higher level, but as you said, isn't quite at that tippy top level where when they get a title match, you expect a victory from them. So, I don't see Sakazaki. So I think it's between Mizuki and Nakajima, although I do think you're right that I think that Mizuki's next title challenge should be a win for her. She should win the title. So I think if she wins here, that would be the outcome. So I think it's if Mizuki wins, I think she's going on to the big show to win. And if it were Shoko, I think it's just another defense for Tatsumi.
I just want Mizuki to win on a Tokyo Joshi Pro proper show, just for like that. And I mean, frankly, I'd like for it to be held off for like a nice big crowd. But that's kind of my thought on Mizuki. It's just like seems like such a big moment when she finally wins the title.
Yeah, of course, as we talked about, holding it off for a big crowd might mean holding a match for a year plus this point, which, I guess you could do, but then you've probably got to, I would think you would need at least one other champion because I'm assuming Rika is not going to hold for over a year. She could, but I just don't see it as that sort of reign, super dominant, crushing everyone she faced, sort of like that Miyu reign where she beat all the challengers for so long. I don't see that. I don't see Rika's reign as that. But, I think that they could give it to Mizuki and say, this is a big show. It's a joint show with all of these promotions that we have. So they may see it as a big show for her to win. And then, of course, the bigger, thing is the Yuka challenge, which is going to have all this history to it. And so that, of course, would be on a Tokyo Joshi show proper. So that may be the big match they're sort of aiming for.
All right, let's look at what else is on the bottom of this card. We have Pam Harajuku and Haruna Neko versus Mahiro Kiru and Muka Miyamoto. What are your big, huge thoughts on that match, Taylor?
My big, huge thoughts are should be a fun match.
We got Hyper Misao, Noroka Tenma, and Yuki Aino versus Nao Kakta, Marika Kobashi, and Raku.
Yeah, an interesting. Yeah, should be a fun match, but an interesting teaming of Misao and the Bakuretsu sisters. It will be, the Bakuretsu sisters are in an interesting place now, having lost the tag titles, and there's been some, Yuki Aino has had some singles opportunities, before they won the tag title. So it'll be interesting to see if they stay together or if they sort of move apart into more singles focused programs. I don't know that we'll get that answer in this match, but something to keep an eye on.
Then we get the big Idol debut match, Yuki Arai. She is teaming with Miyu Watanabe to take on Maki Ito and Arisu Endo. So we get failed Idol versus successful Idol in this match.
Yeah, and an interesting match, that it isn't that they've stacked this match with veterans. I mean, Endo is very new and, Miyu Watanabe is still relatively young, and even Ito, who I think is the longest tenured, although that may be wrong, but no one really, you would think, okay, we have a big rookie debuting. They're getting a lot of talk. You might think, okay, who is a very established person we can throw in there to ensure that, this goes well. But I think it shows a lot of faith in the improvements of a lot of the workers on this roster that you can, I look in this match and I say, oh, they're all fairly young wrestlers, but I don't look at this and go, oh no, this might be a disaster. I think it will still be a very good match, and we'll see if Yuki Arai is sort of in that same area as Arisa Endo, who came out the gate very strong. We'll see if that's pattern continues, or maybe that was a one-off and that would make Endo look even better. But certainly an interesting match. Obviously, Yuki Arai is not your everyday, we got someone coming out of the dojo. So looking forward to it.
Ito is the longest tenured wrestler in the match. He was at least in Tokyo Joshi a year before Miyu, but goes back, of course, to a long time ago. 2013, Maki Ito's first match. That's all. International Princess title on the line, Yuki Kamafuku versus Hikari Noa.
Yeah, this is an interesting match because I have when they announced the match, I was thinking, well, is this Hikari Noa hasn't been winning a lot of matches, but it has felt like between the hardcore match and the Yamashita match and the stuff at the festival, which I talked about with her getting a lot of press of jumping off the stage. Is this a time to sort of pull the trigger and see what she can do, or is the thought still that she's got to build up more? I mean, I think I think very easily I could see Hikari Noa winning this match. She's gotten sort of the wind in her sail, so it feels like it wouldn't be out of place for her to say, I used this experience. I didn't win these big matches that I was in, but I used the experience and went into a big match and, use that to win. So I could certainly see that happening. And I think, Hikari Noa was someone back when they were running that tournament to crown the new champion who I thought could have won that tournament and didn't quite get there. So I think that this could be the moment where she wins the title.
All right. Interesting. Either way, I think this is another example to me. We've talked about this the last few shows of how much they've strengthened the cards and extended the cards to where there's, much better stuff up and down the cards in Tokyo Joshi Pro. And this I think is a great example, third from the top, but a match that I'm really looking forward to without using any of the people who were in the three-way match, Yamashita, Maki Ito, any of that. You still got a strong match here, third on the card.
Yeah, and I think really the four matches, obviously the sort of Yuki Arai debut match, you don't go in going, oh, it's going to be a 4.5-star match, but there is sort of some interest in it. So I think really the whole top, and this has been the case for the last few months, I think, looking back on all the cards, that they've really have a company now that you sort of expect the top half of these Korakuen shows to be very strong. And I think this one is very strong.
Yeah, I 100% agree. The tag title match, Saki-sama and Mei-san Michelle in their first defense against Mirai Mayumi and Suzume.
Yeah, I think this is probably the match where the outcome for me seems least in question, but it's a match I'm still really looking forward to. A big opportunity for Mirai and Suzume. And I think, as I've talked about in the past on past shows, they've gotten very good. And I think that this match could really be very good. Obviously, the main event's going to have big, high standards with Yamashita in the match against Tatsumi. But I think that this match could really steal the show, especially for people coming in who may be drawn in by Yamashita or hearing about that. I think Mayumi is improving every time out. Suzume is very good. Mei-san Michelle, as I've talked about on this, show, is very good. Exactly what Tokyo Joshi is looking for. So I think that this could really be a very, very strong match.
Yeah, I'm excited for Mayumi to just have another opportunity, up higher on the card. I think every time she's in these spots, whatever spot she's in, she delivers. So I think this is going to be exciting to see her in a title match. Yeah, I don't think there's any chance that she and Suzume win, but it gives her another opportunity to really just show off how good she's becoming. And then in the main event, or the Princess of Princess title, Rika Tatsumi defends against the long-tenured champion, Miyu Yamashita.
Well, Aaron, I'll ask you, what do you think the outcome of this match is going to be?
I think Tatsumi is winning. It's less, or it's how do I need to say this? It's more in doubt than the tag title match, but not much for me.
Yeah, I agree. I was just curious to see if you thought the same. I think Tatsumi, almost has to win this one to sort of establish herself, because I think Yamashita winning sort of cuts her legs out from underneath her. In terms of, I think that's the story of, you beat me in the past. And so this is I think the moment to really solidify Rika at the top of the card. I think obviously this match will be good. Yamashita has been delivering good matches seemingly on every one of these Korakuens. And now this has the extra, it's the main event. It's for a title. It's high stakes. So I think that this should really deliver. And, if everything in sort of the top half of this card delivers the way that it possibly could, now some of these, it's always possible they underdeliver, but if they deliver in the way that I think they could, I think that this could really be a sort of sneaky contender for, a show of the year. Frankly, you have the opener between three really great wrestlers, and then you have these, the interesting debut and three pretty strong top title matches. I think that this could really deliver and be a really, really great show.
Oh yeah, I'm 100% really looking forward to this. We'll definitely, well, I shouldn't say definitely because it's in the middle of the week, isn't it? So I may not stay up to watch it live, but it's going to be a great show. Tatsumi has, to me, and maybe I was just wrong on Tatsumi, but has over-delivered as champion. So I have great expectations for this title match. All right, we're looking forward to that one. I mean, sadly, it will be old news by the time we record again, but I'm sure we'll have some thoughts on it by then. But what else is coming up in the next couple of weeks, Taylor?
So Tokyo Joshi also has two shows on the 5th and the 14th. And then Ice Ribbon, another company that's going to have a busy period in this next 2 weeks. They have 3 days at the Yokohama Wrestling Festival. On the 3rd, there will be a Triangle Ribbon title match, Matsuyu Uno, Tekla, and Ibuki Hoshi. On the 4th, Tekla versus Madeline for the WUW Underground title that Tekla holds. And then Tsukushi Haruka against Itsuki Aoki. Itsuki Aoki winning the Peas League and so getting her IWGQ title match at this show. And then on the 5th is that Suzu Suzuki Jun Kazai match, the 4th match in the Suzu Suzuki Hardcore Series. The only disappointment here is that I don't believe Yokohama allows for hardcore matches, so we'll see how that gets sort of worked around in this match with Jun Kasai. And then they have a show on the 8th. On the 9th, the 5th match in the hardcore series, Suzu Suzuki versus Isami Kodaka. That should be a really fun match. And they have shows on the 15th and 16th as well. So lots of shows coming up for Ice Ribbon. Actress Girls has shows on the 4th and the 16th. Diana has as I mentioned, another dojo show that will be airing on YouTube tomorrow. Wave has a tag title match coming up tomorrow. The champions Rin Katakura and Itsuki Aoki will take on the Ladies team of Sae and Konatsu. So that should be an interesting match. Don't really see the two of them sort of out and about in the greater universe of Joshi. So looking forward to that. And then, as I mentioned, Choco Pro's doing shows every day through the 5th. So they have the show on the 3rd. They're using a lot of Actress Girls talent. Show on the 4th has Lulu Pencil versus Sayaka. If someone were to win that match, it would be their first one-on-one victory. Of course, it could always go to a time limit draw or a DQ, I guess. But an interesting outcome there. And then Trans Am Hiroshi will have his 10-year anniversary match against Bali and Aki on that show. And then on the 5th, the main event, the Best Bros, Mei Saruga and Bali and Aki against Saki and Sayaka Obihiro. So lots of fun Choco Pro shows coming up, in addition to all the big number of shows. It was a quiet sort of last 2 weeks, partially due to the cancellations, but things are definitely ramping up for the next 2 weeks.
All right. Well, I think that's everything for this week, Taylor. What do you think? Is there anything else left to discuss?
Aaron, I think we covered it all.
Follow us on Twitter at JBombAudio. I'm at Aaron Like the Car. Taylor's at Tay Mambo. Subscribe to the podcast. Give us a 5-star rating and review. And if you'd like to donate to the show, head over to redcircle.com/shows. facebook.com/jumping-bomb-audio. That's it. We'll see you in 2 weeks' time, friends.
Bye-bye.